His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Samstapakacharya, Savior of the whole world, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Dharam Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayesha Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 15. Chapter 15 is entitled Parshurama, the Lord's Warrior Incarnation. Read the verse. Verse. Verse number 15. Driptam Chatram Bhuvo Bharam. Driptam Chatram Bhuvo Bharam. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Rajastamo Vritam Ahan. Volume reduce a little. Rajastamo Vritam Ahan. Rajastamo Vritam Ahan. Falguni Api Krite Amhasi. Falgunyapi Kritem Hasi. Falgunyapi Kritem Hasi. Druptam Kshatram Bhuvo Bharam. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Rajastamo Vritam Mahan. Falgunyapi Kritem Hasi. Druptam Chatram Bhuvo Bharam. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Rajastamo Vritam Mahan. Falgunyapi Kritem Hasi. Druptam Chatram Bhuvo Bharam. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Rajastamo Vritam Mahan. Falgunyapi Kritem Hasi. Druptam Chatram Bhuvo Bharam. Abrahmanyam Aninashat. Rajastamo vritam mahan Falgunyapi kritem hasi Druptam kshatram bhuvo bharam Abrahmanyam maninasya Rajastamo vritam mahan Falgunyapi kritem hasi Druptam, very proud. Kshatram, the Kshatriyas, the ruling class. Bhuvaha, of the earth. Bharam, burden. Abramanyam, sinful, not caring for the religious principles enunciated by the Brahmanas. Aninashat, drove away or annihilated. Rajaha, tamaha, the qualities of passion and ignorance. Vritam, covered. Ahan, he killed. Falguni, not very great. Api, although. Krite, had been committed. Amhasi, an offense. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. When the royal dynasty, being excessively proud because of the material modes of passion and ignorance, became irreligious and ceased to care for the laws enacted by the Brahmanas, Parshurama killed them. Although their offense was not very severe, he killed them to lessen the burden of the world. Please repeat this translation after me. When the royal dynasty, being excessively proud because of the material modes of passion and ignorance, became irreligious and ceased to care for the laws enacted by the Brahmanas, Parshurama killed them. Although their offense was not very severe, he killed them to lessen the burden of the world. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Kshatriyas or the ruling class must govern the world in accordance with the rules and regulations enacted by great Brahmanas and saintly persons. As soon as the ruling class becomes irresponsible in regard to the religious principles, it becomes a burden on the earth. As stated here, Rajastamo Vritam Bharam Abramanyam. When the ruling class is influenced by the lower modes of nature, namely ignorance and passion, it becomes a burden to the world and must then be annihilated by superior power. We actually see from modern history that monarchies have been abolished by various revolutions. But unfortunately, the monarchies have been abolished to establish the supremacy of third class and fourth class men. Although monarchies overpowered by the modes of passion and ignorance have been abolished in the world, the inhabitants of the world are still unhappy. For although the qualities of the former monarchs were degraded by taints of ignorance, These monarchs have been replaced by the men of mercantile and worker classes whose qualities are even more degraded. When the government is actually guided by Brahmanas or God conscious men, then there can be real happiness for the people. Therefore, in previous times, when the ruling class was degraded to the modes of passion and ignorance, the Brahmanas, headed by such a Kshatriya spirited Brahmana as Parshurama, killed them 21 consecutive times. In Kali Yuga, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 2nd chapter, 13th verse, Dasyuprayeshu Rajasu, because, the ruling class, Rajanya, will be no better than plunderers, Dasyus, because the third class and fourth class men will monopolize the affairs of the government, ignoring the religious principles and Brahminical rules and regulations. They will certainly try to plunder the riches of the citizens without consideration, as stated elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 1st chapter, 40th verse. Asamskrita kriyahina rajasa tamasa vritaha prajaste bhakshayishyanti mlecha rajanya rupinaha, being unpurified, neglecting to discharge human duties properly, and being influenced by the modes of passion, rajas, and ignorance, tamas, unclean people, nichas, posing as members of the government, rajanya rupinaha, will swallow the citizens, prajaste bhakshayishyanti. And in still another place, Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 2nd chapter, verses 7 and 8 says, Evam prajabhir dushtabhir akirne shiti mandale brahmavit kshatra shudrana yo bali bhavita drupaha prajahi lubdhai rajanyai nirgranay dasyudharmabhihi Achinnadan Dravina Yasyanti Girikananam. Human society is naturally grouped into four divisions as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. But if this system is neglected and the qualities and divisions of society are not considered, the result will be Brahmavit Kshatra. The so-called caste system of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra will be meaningless. As a result, whoever somehow or other becomes powerful will be the king or president, and thus the prajas or citizens will be so harassed that they will give up hearth and home and will go to the forest. Yasyanti Girikananam, to escape harassment by government officials who have no mercy and are addicted to the ways of plunderers. Therefore, the prajas or the people in Jatara, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has now appeared as an incarnation by his holy name. Charine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaswata Manu, the present Manu who is ruling mankind, the seventh Manu, even up to Brahma, or even for that matter, Lord Shiva. No jiva or no personality in this material world can have power as much as an incarnation of the Supreme Lord displays. In exceptional cases, a jiva may display some extraordinary power. That is because such a jiva is empowered by the Supreme Lord for a specific purpose. They became excessively proud of their power, of their strength, of their position, care for and regulations by which they should carry out their function of ruling the people, citizens, and then they become a burden for the earth, for this world. So Parshurama killed them because he wanted to reduce the burden of the earth planet, burden of the world. In the 10th canto, it is described when the earth was overburdened by demons posing as Kshatriyas. In answer to the request of Brahma to reduce the burden of the world, Vishnu incarnated. Vishnu appeared in his original form as Krishna, and Krishna came. One of the reasons why Krishna appeared is to reduce the burden of the world. Now, when are the kings said to be burden for the earth? That is also mentioned here. When they become irreligious. Irreligious means they don't follow the codes of dharma, the codes of religion. The codes of religion are given by the Supreme Lord. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The codes of religion are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the Vedic literature. But Vedic literature don't directly give the specific codes. So deciphering the Vedic literature, great saintly persons and brahmanas, great sages, they prepare literature which is called Smriti literature. The original Vedas are called Shruti. Vedas contain all kinds of knowledge necessary for the human society. But to decipher the Vedas, because Vedas contain all kinds of codes again. So to decipher the Vedas is possible only if human society is guided by learned brahmanas, saintly persons, great sages, rishis, great devotees. So only they can decipher the Vedas and give proper direction to the people in general. Just like nowadays, so much information is available on the internet. But does it mean people can just go to the internet and supposing somebody is sick, just go to the internet and figure out what is your sickness and what is the... One may read some books or some information just for educating yourself a little more than what you may not know. But not that you can replace a learned doctors' help for you to get cured of some disease or treating some ailment. That is never the proper thing to do. So similarly, if somebody thinks I can read the Vedas and figure out myself what is to be done, what is not to be done, which is happening now. Like Prabhupada was asked, what is the reason for you to write one more translation of the Bhagavad Gita when there are already so many translations? One American lady, she asked Prabhupada this question. And that was a very, very good question. Prabhupada said, yeah, very good question. Why should I write one more when there are already so many translations? What is the reason why I am specifically writing a translation of the Bhagavad Gita? So Prabhupada said, as far as I can see, none of those translations, at least in English, none of them are actually explaining the proper meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. You see, when somebody thinks that I know Sanskrit, therefore I can translate the Bhagavad Gita, which is in Sanskrit. It's like telling I know English, so I can read a medical textbook which is written in English, and then I can actually understand what is medical science. That never works. So similarly, for the people in general to think that they can themselves figure out what is contained in the Vedas. Just like nowadays there is a movement, there is a very big group of people who follow some person who is trying to popularize chanting of Gayatri mantra. Because according to this person, Gayatri mantra is very powerful. Yeah, it's true. Gayatri mantra is very powerful. That's correct. But then to harness the power of chanting Gayatri is not possible simply if you tell people you learn this Gayatri mantra and you chant every day. Then you will get the benefit of using that power of Gayatri mantra. No, you should know how to chant, and it requires a certain qualification, and you have to approach the right person to receive that mantra. To receive that mantra. What is there in a mantra after all? Mantra is a sound vibration. But it is not an ordinary sound vibration. Mantra is a spiritual sound vibration. So spiritual sound vibration, even though it may appear like another ordinary material sound vibration, it is not. So the words may be simple, but to chant the mantra in such a way that you are able to actually get the benefit of that chanting in terms of getting spiritual benefit. You require to learn the technique of properly chanting from the right person can properly teach you. Just like to learn the medical science, it's not enough if you approach somebody who knows how to read a medical textbook in English, if it is written in English. No. You have to approach an experienced, expert person in medical science, a qualified doctor, a qualified professor. And then you can learn, because the professor is going to teach something more than just the contents of some textbook. It's not difficult to understand this example. Similarly, in the spiritual science, there is more than just merely vibrating the tongue and simply producing that sound. Though, in the case of Hare Krishna mantra, if somebody is able to somehow chant, vibrate the tongue, it works. But you cannot get the full benefit of chanting Hare Krishna if you don't approach a bona fide spiritual master from whom you receive the mantra and whose instructions you follow for chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Just like a doctor, a qualified doctor may write a medicine for some particular ailment that you may have and you approach the doctor. But then his writing a medicine is not same as you referring the internet and telling, if you got this particular symptom, you take this medicine. The internet or a book or a unqualified person is not able to diagnose what is the real problem inside the body because of which you are having that you're having some symptoms. They're not able to diagnose because they're not conversant with the science. They're not learned the science properly. Similarly, chanting the mantra, even though there is benefit, that's not true of the Vedic mantras. Vedic mantras are different. The holy name of the Supreme Lord is different. So both are meant for the same purpose, for realizing God, for realizing the self. But realizing the self or realizing God through the Vedic mantras requires one have some particular qualification. What is that qualification? Qualification of a Brahmana. And then learn this chanting of the mantra from a qualified Brahmana who is trained up and has learned from another qualified Brahmana how to chant. So, in the background of that chanting is a certain consciousness that's called the consciousness of a Brahmana. And that consciousness of the Brahmana is understood by the qualities of the Brahmana. Shamo, Damo, Tapas, Shaucham, Shantir, Arjavam, Evacha, Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikyam, Dhamma, Karma, Svabhavajam. A Brahmana is qualified if he has got these 9 qualities by which he works as a Brahmana. So without that consciousness, merely mouthing some few words of a mantra is not going to be effective as regards the original Vedic mantras. It's not going to be effective. So since in Kali Yuga there are no qualified Brahmanas, there is no possibility of people either learning to chant the Vedic mantras for self-realization or taking help of qualified Brahmanas who will chant for you. What used to happen in the earlier ages? That the common people in Treta Yuga, if they have to get the benefit of the Vedic mantras for self-realization, they have to take help of a qualified Brahmana to perform yajna. So the qualified Brahmana will perform the yajna, and because the Brahmana is qualified, he will chant the mantras properly. So that chanting of mantra will be effective in pouring the oblations in the fire, and the performer of the yajna, even though not qualified to chant the mantra, will get the benefit of that mantra chanting done by the Brahmana. So that was the system in Treta Yuga. In Satya Yuga, everybody engaged in meditation on Vishnu. In Treta Yuga, the Brahmanas themselves would perform sacrifices, yajana. They also help others to perform sacrifice when they conduct the sacrifice for passing on the benefit of that sacrifice to the performer of the sacrifice. And in Dwapar Yuga, temple worship, again, temple worship has to be done. The worship of the deity has to be done by qualified Brahmanas. It cannot be done by anybody else. It has to be done by qualified Brahmanas. Then people who participate in such worship in Dwapar Yuga, worship performed by qualified Brahmanas, then the people can also get benefit of such worship done by qualified Brahmanas for themselves. They can get spiritual benefit. But in Kali Yuga, there are no qualified Brahmanas. So therefore, the people cannot take advantage of performing sacrifices or in participating in deity worship in the temples particularly. It is not possible for them to get spiritual benefit. Therefore, it is forbidden for those who are unqualified to chant the Vedic mantras or perform the Vedic sacrifices or engage in deity worship or participate in deity worship done by unqualified Brahmanas. You can see in some of the temples you go, the so-called priest or pujari may be wearing a sacred thread, but is he really a qualified Brahmana to engage in proper deity worship in the temple? That you will find if you really go into the details. You find the person is not really so qualified. How do we know he's not qualified? Because he doesn't have the qualities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita which are required of a Brahmana. Shamo, damo, tapas, shaucham, shantir, arjavam, evacha, jnanam, vijnanam, astikyam, brahma, karma, svabhavajam. So you'll find them lacking in these qualities. Some are more qualities, one or more qualities. So therefore, you cannot get benefit, spiritual benefit, by participating in worship done by unqualified Brahmana. Because the deity is not simply a statue. Deity is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was appeared in that form to accept the worship. And he accepts worship only from somebody who has got qualification. So therefore in Kali Yuga, because there are no qualified Brahmanas, as described in the Shastra, therefore in Kali Yuga, the only recommendation for self-realization, for God realization, for spiritual advancement is chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Not the Vedic mantras, not Gayatri mantra. What is recommended is chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Now, the chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Lord can be done by anybody even without any qualification. People can chant even without receiving the mantra from any proper source. They can chant. But if they want the full benefit of chanting Hare Krishna, which is realizing Krishna, that is possible if they receive the holy name from a bona fide spiritual master who is a pure devotee of Krishna. This is what the Shastra says. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Self-realized spiritual master can impart this transcendental knowledge, which is nothing but devotional service, which begins with chanting Hare Krishna. Because as I said, chanting is not merely the vibration of the tongue and producing the sound. Some people in Kali Yuga, they do chanting, silent chanting. Now, there is something like silent chanting recommended in the Vedas. The Gayatri mantra is an example of a mantra which is to be chanted silently. Gayatri mantra should be chanted silently. So, this so-called Gayatri Parivar, they loudly chant the Gayatri mantra. I'm not sure. I think they loudly chant the Gayatri mantra because I've heard they have got CDs and nowadays they've got this audio tracks of some people chanting together Gayatri mantra. Gayatri mantra is not to be chanted loudly by anybody. Gayatri mantra requires qualification for anybody to chant and get the spiritual benefit. What is that qualification? One has to become a qualified Brahmana. Whereas the Hare Krishna mantra does not require qualification. So without any qualification, anybody who chants Hare Krishna will get some minimum benefit. What is the minimum benefit of chanting Hare Krishna? You become purified of all sinful reactions. Anyhow you chant, you become purified of all sinful reactions. The example is given of Ajamila. Ajamila was very, very sinful. But he was calling out his son's name, Narayana, 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 Narayana. So even though he was not calling out Narayana, referring to the Supreme Lord, because the sound of the holy name somehow came out of his mouth, he became purified. He became purified. So, this benefit is there of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra by anybody without any qualification, without even receiving the mantra from the proper source. You can become purified. That means, what is the meaning of purification? You don't have to suffer the reactions of your past sinful activities. But then to get the real benefit of this purification in terms of making spiritual advancement is possible. If you receive this mantra and are guided by a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because let us say somebody chants Hare Krishna but is not having proper guidance. So they don't stop sinful activities. They continue their sinful activities and they also keep chanting Hare Krishna. Then what happens? It is like elephant bath, kunjara shauchavat. Elephant takes bath very nicely only when it is able to enter a big reservoir of water because it's a huge body. So then it will nicely, thoroughly cleanse itself. It requires a lot of water. So if it gets a lot of water in a big reservoir of water, then it cleanses itself thoroughly. Very nice bath it takes. Huge body, fully cleansed. It comes out. And what does it do? It again sprinkles mud all over its body, dirt all over its body. So the purpose of the bath is lost. Cleansing the body is lost. Similarly, the purpose of chanting Hare Krishna is to cleanse the heart, the consciousness of all sinful reactions. But if somebody does not stop sinning after beginning to chant Hare Krishna, then they are cleansing and again dirtying their consciousness. Purifying, again dirtying. Again purifying, again dirtying. Again purifying, again dirtying. So in this way, they don't become free from sinful reactions totally. Therefore, when you approach a pure devotee or you receive this Hare Krishna mantra from pure devotee, you are also informed that now onwards don't commit sinful activities. Now onwards don't commit sinful activities. You start chanting Hare Krishna, but don't commit sinful activities anymore. Now, how to stop sinning? That also the spiritual master will guide you. Because old habits, bad habits especially, are very difficult to stop. Simply by deciding to stop, it may not be possible for everyone to simply stop some sinful activities. Especially sinful activities, very difficult to stop. So, the spiritual master will guide. The spiritual master will give guidance in such a way that ultimately you will be successful in chanting Hare Krishna, not only to purify yourself, but also to stop all sinful activities, make progress on the spiritual path, and achieve the highest perfection of Krishna Prema. This is the reason why you have to receive this mantra from the pure devotee spiritual master and then chant. So full benefit of chanting Hare Krishna is only for those who receive this mantra and follow the guidance of a pure devotee of Krishna. That's why Prabhupada has started this Krishna consciousness movement. And in this purport, because this verse is describing Parshurama killed to lessen the burden of the world, all those Kshatriyas who were irreligious and who were not following the laws enacted by the Brahmanas and the saintly persons. But now the world is being ruled not by monarchs, not by kings, but some men who have assumed power in the government They are not qualified Kshatriyas, and qualified Brahmanas don't rule. They only give guidance to qualified Kshatriyas. So neither there are qualified Kshatriyas nor there are qualified Brahmanas to guide those who are ruling. So as a result of that, there are only unqualified third class and fourth class men ruling uh, this world in different places. So according to the Vedic culture, first class men in the society are the Brahmanas, the qualified Brahmanas. The qualified Kshatriyas are considered second class men. The qualified Vaishyas are considered third class men. And the qualified Shudras are considered fourth class men. Actually, even though Prabhupada says the world is being ruled by third class and fourth class men, it is not even third and fourth class, because they are not. There are people who claim to be Vaishyas or Shudras, or they have some qualities of being Vaishyas or Shudras, but they are not qualified Vaishyas, they are not qualified Shudras. In the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, there is a description of what is the qualification of a Vaishya and what is the qualification of a Shudra in the Vedic system, Varnashrama system. A Shudra is obedient to a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya under whom the Shudra always works. Nowadays, Shudras are not under any qualified person. They want to be independently working. They just come to do work to get some money. That's all. And you have to be satisfied with whatever work they do. You cannot expect them to work properly. Unqualified Shudras. And they're so proud, they're so arrogant, they're so disobedient that you cannot expect them to properly do the work. So unqualified Shudras. And Vaishyas, of course, Vaishya has got the propensity to earn money by doing business or trade or whatever. But a Vaishya should not simply keep on making money. Vaishya should utilize the money for the higher purpose in life. Give charity to Brahmanas and pay taxes to the government, to the king or the government. In the Vedic system, only the Vaishyas pay tax. Nobody else pays taxes. Because only the Vaishyas are capable of paying taxes. Only the Vaishyas are capable of paying taxes. So, the Vaishyas should pay tax and they should utilize their money not only for their maintenance but also for giving charity to Brahmanas, paying taxes to the government, and also maintaining the Shudras, properly maintaining the Shudras by taking good care of them. But this whole system is topsy-turvy because there are no qualified Brahmanas, no qualified Kshatriyas, no qualified Vaishyas, no qualified Shudras. All are fifth class men or lower than fifth class. And that classification also there in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. Who is considered fifth class, sixth class, 7th class, 8th class, 9th class, 10th class. Narad Muni has given this classification. So if you examine in detail, you'll find people not even fitting in the 5th class. They're lower than 5th class even, some people. There are 10th class men. There are people who don't even have 10th class qualification. Lower than even that. They are degraded to become almost animal-like. They're no longer human beings. 10th class means at least the person is a human being. So dharma vihina pashubhis samana. This is what the Shastra says. So people who don't follow any rules or regulations, typically, at least when the time Prabhupada went to America in 1965, there were so many of these people not following any rules or regulations. They were called hippies. Hippies, living like animals. Dharma vihina pashubhis samana. Exactly as the Shastra describes. Prabhupada observed that Shastric description is perfect. So such people, you cannot expect them to follow any rules or regulations. They are against following rules and regulations. They don't want to follow any rules or regulations. So what is the hope for such people? They are so degraded, living very degraded lives. Some of them are very fortunate to come in contact with Prabhupada and accept Prabhupada's direction and guidance to save them from progressing towards hellish life. So, you have to receive the mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, from the pure devotee. Of course, those who may not have received the mantra from the pure devotee, if they really chant, then Paramatma within the heart will guide them to actually properly chant by receiving the mantra from the pure devotee. Receiving the mantra means taking the guidance for how to chant to achieve the highest perfection. How to chant. You have to learn from Prabhupada, not from anybody else, not from any unqualified person. You have to learn from Prabhupada. So Prabhupada teaches not only the mantra itself or how to hold the bead or count on the bead, not only that, but something much, much more. How to avoid the offenses against chanting Hare Krishna, which comes in the way of our spiritual progress to attain the highest perfection of Krishna Prema. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that if you chant for millions of lives, but you don't avoid the offenses, you can never get Krishna Prema, the actual result of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Prema. We are all hankering for that Krishna Prema, whether we know it or don't know it. We are seeking that love of Krishna, and we are seeking that love in our different material relationships. If we don't get that, then we do try to do so many other things for that love, getting that love. Just like people, when they become frustrated in their love affairs with so many other persons, then they say, I love my car, I love my dog. Why? Because it indicates, there is a certain message in that statement, that they are not getting the love that they are seeking. That's how they become frustrated, actually. So, you can get that love only if you awaken your dormant love for Krishna within your heart. And only Krishna can give you that love. And that has been made very simple by the instruction that you should chant the Hare Krishna mantra without offenses. And how to chant without offenses? What are the offenses? That is taught by Prabhupada. So you should chant. One of the offenses is to commit sinful activities along with chanting Hare Krishna. So you have to stop sinning. To stop sinning, as I said earlier, it's not very easy for everybody. It's not very easy. So to stop sinning, you have to take guidance how to stop sinning from the spiritual master. So one of the simple ways to stop sinning is to associate with devotees who are engaged in Krishna consciousness and at least have stopped grossly sinning. There is gross sin and there is subtle sin. Sins committed in the mind and sins committed through the body. Through the body, gross body, we commit sins, that is gross sinning. So at least one should avoid associating with people who are grossly sinning. Drunkards, meat eaters, womanizers, prostitute hunters, liars, cheaters, all kinds of people who commit gross sinful activities. And there are many categories of such grossly sinning people. Most of the population is like that, unfortunately. But if you take shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement, you can be saved from the harassment of this Dasyuprayeshu Rajasu, these plunderers who are actually plundering your wealth and your possessions in the name of being governmental rulers or governmental people, government people. So wealth can't already, it is predicted. As Kali Yuga progresses, the so-called rulers will be simply plunderers. They'll take away all your wealth. Now we can already see the taxes are increasing more and more. And recently I heard from one contractor that Karnataka has become the only state where some building material tax has come to 40%. And contractors are really harassed. People are not able to afford to pay that much of tax, and contractors are not having jobs. Even though there is so much of work to be done in terms of construction, because people can't afford 40% tax. So what do the contractors do? What do people who want to get some construction work done, what do they do? So this is the way it is going to be as time progresses in Kali Yuga. You can already see it. In some of the European countries, the income tax comes to 65%. Income tax, 65%. So for whom is the person working? Not for himself or herself. They're working for somebody else to enjoy at the cost of common people's hard work. Somebody else is going to enjoy the wealth you're going to earn by your hard work, your sincere efforts. This is Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, the only solution is take shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement, associate with devotees in Krishna consciousness, chant Hare Krishna, but learn to chant Hare Krishna by taking guidance of Srila Prabhupada. Of course, you begin by just chanting Hare Krishna, somehow you chant. But to progress further, please take guidance of Prabhupada. What more you have to do than merely vibrate the tongue and chant Hare Krishna? Something more is required. So that in the association of devotees, you'll easily learn. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. Announcements. Some few announcements. We are celebrating Deepotsava